New on Curiosity Stream.
I'm James Burke. I'm going to take you on a journey through time.
James Burke's visionary series returns, reimagined for our time.
Now, this is all uncharted territory.
The Washington Post hails Burke as one of the most intriguing minds in the Western world. The New York Times raves he careens from one great moment in history to another.
Where do we want to go from here?
Experience all new connections.
So what's the next connection?
With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
On the heels of Cabin Fever, we have Bucket List. And just listen to that. Really beautiful, extensive release. Was that done in studio, or how did you put this one together?
No, this was a pandemic baby. None of us were in the same room at the same time.
And
I think it's a tribute to the skill of the musicians, and the fact that I can actually play to a click, and the engineer.
Yeah, that's the magic. Is getting this,
because that's the unsung, how do you make of course they have to play together and they have to play off one another. But no, it was all done individually.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of interesting instruments on this release, more so than a lot of others. Who are the cast of characters who come together?
Actually,
all of that.
Actually, it's the same guys I have recorded with for a long time. Cabin Fever was a man and an instrument.
Right.
It was what it had to be. It was done in quarantine. It would have been weird to have a band at that particular time. With this, I thought that these were songs that called for a little more flesh on the bones. And I felt like I had to go to people I absolutely trusted. And these were the guys. And not only did they have the musical chops, but one of the things that I have always done in the studio is I don't show up with, here, charts, play this. These musicians are way better musicians than I am. And they're creative, and they're guys who often get handed charts and said, play this. And so they're involved in the songs from the demo stage. I'll send them.
Yeah.
I sent them, I almost said a cassette. That's the old days.
Funny how you get into that.
I sent them a Dropbox of like 40 songs. And I said, listen to these, tell me what you think. Do you see any threads that tie together? And they all came back as, Stuart Duncan, this incredible fiddle player, said, I want that song. Give this to me. I will arrange this, if it's okay with you. And so these guys they listen to the words.
Yeah.
Which is, strangely enough, unusual in the world of studio music, because as you see your chart, you see what you're supposed to play, and you play it. But these guys know the songs, they know the lyrics. We have arguments about the songs. Like the engineer said, this song, The Other, I don't think I like it. I don't get it. So everybody's on board. It's like, Team McCutcheon, and it feels really cohesive. And I love what they have done, and the fact that it sounds somewhat different, I think, is because we didn't have any percussion. We didn't have a lead guitar player. We didn't bring in a saxophone player or a horn section or background vocals or anything. It was still that kind of bare thing, but it feels really tight to me.
Yeah, that's a good common thread with your strings and the piano. It just feels really good and organic that way.
Yeah.
It's huge studio. Though maybe I envision you all in a room in a studio, but we're still sending files back and forth and then the engineer is mixing all this. It's just very, very good mix too, as well. So
Well,
tell us about that, the title track, starting with Bucket List. What came to mind when that was getting put together?
well, my wife Carmen and I have a little log cabin. I think I probably talked to you about this before.
North Georgia, yeah.
And we've spent a lot of time there in the last 18 months. And she's a writer as well. And one night we were both sitting around the fireplace. This sounds very, Walton-esque. And we were reading.
Yeah.
And I looked across the room, and this was a point at which I had reconciled myself to the fact that my life was going to be really different for the unforeseeable future. I mean, this is, for 50 years, I have headed to the airport every weekend, and I've met my roadie, and we've gotten a rental car or a van and spent a long weekend traveling hither and yon and sound checks and concerts and meet and greets and early morning media and yada, yada. And here I was at home for longer than I had been. I observed to a friend of mine recently, I haven't slept in my own bed this much since I was in high school.
Yeah, what a perspective. God.
And I looked across the room and I saw her and I thought, I've done some amazing things in my life. I mean, I got pretty sick about 5-6 years ago. And I remember thinking, well, if this is it, I've had an unbelievable life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All the things you've done.
All the places I've gotten to go. And the thing about playing folk music is it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to the Soviet Union or to Central America or Australia, and I'm in an Aboriginal community, or I'm in a Native community in some far reaches of Alaska, and people hear this, it's not like they know it, but it's familiar. Consequently, I've never been a tourist, ever.
Because you're doing your job. How much did you? I mean,
even when I'm a tourist, my ears are. There was this little island in the Caribbean, which is a part of Grenada. And within a day, I found this traditional fiddle player, old black man, who's a primitive artist who plays in this band for dances, and the band is a fiddle, a tambourine, a double-headed drum, and a triangle. That's the band. And suddenly, I take out my guitar and I'm doing background guitar, and he's going, "Oh my God, what's that?" So every night it was to a different party. So, I mean, that's how it happens when you play, everything that I do, all my writing is really informed by a lifetime of studying traditional Southern music. And so it kind of comes out in unexpected ways. I mean, in this album, the song Moonshiner, for instance.
Yeah, great track, yes.
Sounds like it could have been on a field recording place. Yeah. Anyway, so Bucket List. I looked across the room and I thought, I've done some amazing things in my life, but the great adventure is right here. Yeah, I mean,
You've been through Stonehenge and Alaska, Senegal. Listen, that's fascinating. The Wailing Wall, which I need to get.
Well, actually, about half the things are things I have actually done. The other half, because I never actually had a bucket list. I didn't say I want to do this. So I thought to fill out the song, I ought to have some stuff I haven't done too. So I have not been to the Wailing Wall.
Okay.
Now I have a bucket list. But the point of it was all these amazing things that you look outward. And that's a lot of what I think is a thread among these songs. I mean, Be Still, the next cut, is a perfect example of that. The internal life that is not separate from your external life. In fact, it is the foundation of that. So that's where Bucket List came from. And it just tumbled out. It was probably the easiest song on the album to write.
Yeah, but it's a nice problem to have, is have a vault of so many songs just written and demoed, and just like, how now do I whittle this down? Great problem to have. I mean, most artists have these writer blocks, and they can't really conjure up enough to get an album out.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking the other day that these big milestones in our times, which seem to either call for songs or disable writers, like post 9/11.
Yeah.
You were either writing more than you'd ever written, or you were completely immobilized. You just didn't know what to do. And I was in the former camp. I wrote tons and tons of stuff. When I got sick, I wrote tons and tons. I wrote about my diagnosis, for God's sake. During the pandemic, I had to force myself to stop writing just because I had to step back and organize everything. My engineer thinks that I'm going to be like Tupac or something. There'll be albums coming out long after I'm dead.
They're going to dig into your vault. I guess you have your engineer designated to do that.
Or Prince,
Somebody had it in a contract recently saying, I don't want anything released after I'm gone. It's like, I don't need you messing with my catalog.
Well, and you hear that about writers. People who say, say to their lover or their brother or somebody, I want you to burn everything. And you just think, okay, if someone said that to me, would I do it? And oftentimes they don't. And this is where we get, I don't know, Wuthering Heights or something.
Yeah, you never know what kind of gold is in there. If you're being too critical, then that's not serving everybody posthumously. I think it's a good idea to have a vault.
Well, and the trick is to not leave your stuff sitting in there. Because for me, that's the interesting thing about these albums that have been done during the pandemic is I haven't had a chance to road test any of these things.
True, too.
And that is a really critical element in my writing process, because a lot of times I don't know. It seems like this will work, but until someone says, "Oh yeah," or "Oh no," I'm missing a piece of the story, or that's not the right terminology, or let me give you another way to think about it. It's a conversation, and I felt like it was missing an important element. So, I mean, a week from today is my first live gig. And I'm really excited to take these songs out there. And it'll be a festival. I'll have 4 sets, an opportunity to get out there and just throw everything at them. And at some point, everybody's going to say, oh, for God's sake, John, sing us some of your old stuff. If we go to a Springsteen concert and don't hear Born to Run,
Exactly. Yeah. They got to hear the hits. Otherwise, it's just like they didn't get their money's worth. That's a problem that legacy artists seem to have. It's like, oh God, I got to do this for the millionth time. I always wonder how that feels to an artist who's like, have to do the staple.
Well, I remember once being at a festival and singing before I sang my song "Christmas in the Trenches," which is inarguably my best known song. And I said, I'd like to do a medley of my hit. And I came off stage, and Loudon Wainwright and Arlo Guthrie were on the same show. And they're both waiting for me at the bottom of the stair. And they grab me and say, don't you ever say that. And Loudon says, how'd you like to have to sing Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road every night? And Arlo said, how'd you like to have a hit that's 25 minutes long?
He can't slice that down live.
Oh, there's half your set, And everybody wants to hear it,
Yeah. It's the real serious hardcore fans like, oh gosh, we got to go through this again. Can't you bring out a rarity? But the rest of the audience is like falling asleep.
Well, you just got to do what Bruce does, play for 4 hours.
That's always been a solution.
Yeah. Anyway.
Very good. So this new release, I love the song called The Other. That seems very current, and how you must have been so inspired with what was going on in the cultural zeitgeist at the moment.
Well, a lot of what's going on in the cultural zeitgeist is a lot of blindered vision. You know, part of what the other does is strip humanity and create caricatures, and you see everybody doing it. You know, it's not the purview of either the left or the right. Everybody does it. I mean, you see imagine you're sitting at a stoplight and there's a pickup truck in front of you with a Trump Pence sticker on it. You go, you know, you create this character.
Yeah, totally.
That's there. Or you're sitting at a stoplight and there's a Prius with a Black Lives Matter sticker on it, or whatever, you know, music will save the world. And you create, even if you agree with them, you create this caricature. So it's something that I just felt needed to be brought out in the open and hopefully make people say, oh, yeah. Because it's one of the elements, and certainly I think it's a major element of why we just don't seem to be able to get along in almost any way and solve the things that's going to take all of us to solve, whether it be, you know, climate, COVID, how to get the potholes fixed on your street.
Yeah, even that's political. Like everything.
Or how just not to be lonely.
Yeah, yeah. I am the other. It's I like the idea of somebody who has a Prius and Trump signs in their yard. I'm sure there's an unusual. It's like, this is a walking contradiction. It's like,
well, and I've seen it. You know, neighbor of mine. So it's like, you know, throw your preconceptions, your misconceptions out the window, and you know, you have to. And I think the most important line in the whole thing is, but I'll come if you're in trouble. What are you gonna...
all in it together. That's really what it's about. I mean, we're all experiencing it, whether that's climate change or the virus. It's like this is a fact. This isn't fantasy. We're all experiencing it. We should all be on the same page. But yeah, we see the resistance.
Well, one of the things that, circling way back to the beginning of the conversation, one of the things that modern news does is focus all our attention at the top of the political pyramid, where we have no access and no influence. And you end up feeling powerless and pissed off. And you think that's where all your attention needs to be, number one. I mean, I met people who could tell you the fine points of Bernie Sanders' climate platform and couldn't tell you who their city council person was, whose work affected 95% of their everyday life.
Totally, yeah. It's the government's closest to you. That's what affects you every single day. Yeah.
So I want to have a neighborhood block party with everybody, because that's the building block of democracy.
Yeah.
And the ability to care about things and act on things that have no direct benefit to you personally. You know, that's when you're willing to stick your neck out. You know, everybody wants to know now, what does this have to do with you? It doesn't have to have direct effect on me, but if it makes our neighborhood safer.
Yeah.
If this guy can get a good job because of this program, and he's got the dignity in work and all that comes with that, you know, it's when you're being confined to home for the last 18 months has made me really focus on home and home in a macro sense. Well, my own neighborhood, the greater Atlanta area, Georgia. Whereas, when you're world hopping all over the place, it's easy to forget that.
So did most of this get written when you were up in the cabin, or a little of both, or over in Smoke Rise, or 50-50?
Well, the songs actually, if you go to the link, and I'm assuming you have the download version, right?
Yes.
And there's a at the bottom of every lyric, and I think it's on there, but certainly on the, if you follow the link to the website, there is a date and a place for every single song.
Okay.
So I don't know, the cabin is a place that is a sacred writing spot.
Okay.
No matter, every day when I'm up there, I know that I'm going to do my morning routine and then go out to the porch, sit in the rocker there, and wait for something to happen. And it always does. It's a really pregnant place. But sometimes I have to come back to Smoke Rise for extended periods of time. And I just continue writing here because, the momentum is there. And it's been clear to me that this is, when I don't have to be distracted by the other parts of my work, like all this stuff that I have to tour with, it's clear that I can get a lot more writing done. And so I think it's revealed to me that this is what my job is. I used to think my job was going out and giving concerts. And I love that, and I'm anxious to get out there, and I'm eager, I guess a little anxious too. Yeah. I'm eager to get out there and do that again and feel that kind of buzz that happens when there's a community for a couple hours a night. But I feel like when I'm not able to do that anymore, or when I don't want to do that anymore, or when nobody wants me to do it anymore, I still have this job. And, it's in an age when the delivery system is so wacky. I mean,
I know.
This is the big discussion among musicians now. Why put out albums?
Yeah. I'm hearing more and more either EPs or singles these days.
And I'm sorry, I'm an old fart, and I remember, and you do too, I'm sure, not that you're an old fart.
Yeah.
Those times when you'd get an album and you get together with your friends and you just sit down and you listen to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a whole theme. It's a place.
And even today, in the world of CDs, where you're in your car, you're doing your dishes, you're cleaning your house, and that's how you're listening to it. There's a song that you discover. Everybody's had this. That is never going to be on the radio.
Right.
It's never going to be a hit. You know that. The writer knows it. The record company knows it. But it becomes this precious thing to you.
Yeah.
And so it gives me freedom too, to know that there are songs out there like The Hinge that was, just proof to me that I can write about anything.
Yeah, The Hinge is great. It's an ode to getting older in a sense, and some really nice sound effects, I'm sure.
But it was one of those songs that I thought, well, I should write this. Or, good heavens, any number of songs, Atonement. I don't know that that's going to get any airplay, but it's about forgiveness. It's about, we all want the white supremacists to reform. Are we going to let them? Or are they going to be branded as this for the rest of their lives, no matter what they do or think or feel? So, I thought it was an important story to tell. And it was like, I could have arguments with my record company about it if I had a record company. And that's the great freedom of what we have now.
Don't have to deal with the A&R guy or gal these days. Somebody's like, well, this isn't going to get played. And you have to craft your music to what they want. It's like, wait a minute, is my name on the record here?
Well, yeah, you've obviously listened into some of those conversations. But luckily, in this kind of music, this sliver of the music world.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details. With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Yeah, if you had an album that did really well, the record company, because, I was on Rounder. They were, if it wasn't for Alison Krauss and George Thorogood and an isolated album here and there, luckily a couple of them were mine, they couldn't do weird stuff that they knew weren't going to sell. And that's why I loved being with them. They knew that being a record company was more than about just making money.
Having the freedom to do it. This is interesting. Bucket List. I was just looking at the album cover here. What inspires this? This is a great album cover. I love this.
Well, I was going to do something really boring, like have a bucket turned over.
Yeah.
And my wife said, "Oh, come on." And then she started just sending me photographs, and I saw this one and I said, "Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. You look at it. Let me pull it out here so I can look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it and you not only want to know that old lady, you want to be that old lady.
Yeah.
It's like, this is,
Is that just a public domain type photograph? Or
Yeah. I mean, we looked and looked and looked and looked to find out who actually took it. And there's credits nowhere.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love the composition. You have a good negative space to put your title there. And
my designer made people disappear.
It's a real craft. I kind of mess around on Photoshop a little bit because I'm a video editor and producer by trade, but I mess around with all the programs, and you could do so much these days.
Yeah.
I love that font.
That's
really great. Cool. That gets people's eyes, and we can get this at folkmusic.com. That's where you could order this.
Yep. And you can get it from Amazon and
all the others. Yeah.
All the other places. But if you want to really help an artist, go to their site.
You got that domain like probably ages ago before anybody could even take that.
I can take no credit. It was the mid-90s, and there was a friend of mine up in Baltimore who said, you really need to get a web page. And I have a son who from the earliest age just fell into the rabbit hole of the internet. And I just said to my friend, I don't think I want to do anything to encourage people sitting in front of computer screens. Me, the great fear of the future. And he said, well, I actually created a web page for you. And I just give me the okay, I will press this button and make it live. He's backstage at a show I'm doing in Baltimore. He's got his laptop. And he says, and I got the domain folkmusic.com.
Wow.
And my first thought was, I'm going to sell that for hundreds of dollars someday. So I couldn't resist. So it was mid-90s. I had nothing to do with it. Somebody else found it for me.
Somebody put that on my radar many years ago at work. A guy who probably saw you at Eddie's Attic, I think. And he showed me this lyric sheet. I was like, this guy wrote about John Ashcroft of all people. John, like what? And I'm just like roaring at it, looking at these lyrics. It's like, I'd never seen anything like this before. This must be a lot of fun to hear live.
Well, that was part of what gushed out after 9/11. I mean, there was angry stuff and there was stuff, contemplative stuff, but then there was also, every Monday I do a Zoom co-songwriting thing with Tom Paxton, who's one of the great folk music songwriters. And he came up with this term that he called short shelf life songs. And Tom has a great sense of humor, and we spend half our time just laughing and telling jokes and picking up funny things. And I thought that humor would be a great way to deal with some of the really horrible things that we are having to experience. And it also, satire can prove that the emperor actually does have no clothes.
Which was true.
Yeah. So my favorite of that era was Dick Cheney told Pat Leahy what to do. Of course, it was physically impossible, but I bet Dick Cheney knew.
I remember that moment. Yeah, but those are short shelf lives. Nobody would even know who John Ashcroft is these days, unless you took
right. And I think when you're doing something really topical, I remember being 11 years old, and the day I discovered folk music was the day my mother made me sit down and watch the March on Washington on television. And one of the moments I remember real clearly, because it's the day I discovered folk music too. I'd never heard of folk music. Why would I, as 11 years old, living in north central Wisconsin? And here was, Joan Baez and Peter, Paul, and Mary and all these people. But Bob Dylan came out and sang Only a Pawn in Their Game. And if you don't know that song, you should listen to it. It's about the death of Medgar Evers, but it's about so much more than that. And the analysis of it it's still astonishing to me that this 21, 22-year-old kid could say, everybody involved is a pawn in the game. The guy who did the shooting, and you tell the poor white man, you're better than the blacks. Don't complain, but you're only a pawn in their game. It was a kind of
brilliant, yeah.
It was a brilliant analysis, and I thought, 20 years old? I mean, I was 11, and I realized 20-year-olds weren't that smart. But the thing that impressed me, because I wasn't that analytical at 11, was that just happened. Yeah. Everybody knew Medgar Evers 2 months before. This just happened 2 months ago. You can write a song about that, and the power of being able to tap into the zeitgeist, as you call it. And sometimes, especially in this 24-hour news cycle, it's 15 minutes. There's power in that. The audience really forgives a lot in that. And if you can use that kind of wide, long leash that you have and have it say something, like at the end of Ashcroft's Army, it's not just about making fun of John Ashcroft. It's about, where was all this spying when Adelphia went under, when Enron ran off with the loot and WorldCom went right down the chute. Some terrorists wear pinstripe suits. Yeah. I want to be a spy. So, if you can use humor and still say something at the same time, it's a great tool to have in your box.
Yeah, cathartic. It's got to feel so good. And especially, I remember that time very well. So, and you do a little bit of history on Bucket List as well, something with a French flair. We talk about a little bit of history. What's the story behind getting that one together?
Well, I actually read about this little town in the travel section of the Sunday New York Times years ago. And it was such an astonishing revelation that this little town was founded by these people who were persecuted. The Huguenots were persecuted by the dominant Catholic Church. So they repaired to this isolated place in southeastern France. And from the earliest times, have sort of had a unspoken welcome mat out. In the song, I say, refugees from the Spanish Civil War came. And then Jews came by the hundreds during World War II. Yeah. And even today, you have people who are refugees from other parts of the world who come there. And it's a combination of these people knowing their own history, and also they were very religious. In my own case, my politics and my worldview was completely shaped by my Catholic upbringing. I didn't have a Marxist professor in college who sort of opened up the world to me. It was my mother sitting me on my ass during my 11th summer and saying, look at this. Here was the civil rights movement. It was led by clergy. It used biblical language. The songs were repurposed hymns. It was a righteous cause. And it was like everything sort of, oh, well, this is God's work. And this resonated with me with Le Chambon sur Lignon. You know, no matter what I say in French, it's going to be wrong.
And I tried that too. I did a little bit of French in high school. Le Chambon sur Lignon.
Exactly. But, you know, and if you were in France, they'd say, no, no, no.
Yeah, I wouldn't even dare.
No. But, you know.
What the hell are you talking about? I've been in France, but I didn't go in the tourist season. I think they were a whole lot nicer in February of that year than you would in July. So
why are you here? It's cold.
Exactly. It was beautiful though. Beautiful. And really, honestly, no tourists around, and you could really enjoy all the sites and museums. Gosh, totally rich in that.
So I did a deep dive into this at one point. A friend of mine was doing a radio show and he referenced it. And then I found a fellow who had been a Jewish refugee as a child, named Pierre Sauvage. And he did a film. And so I wrote to him and he and I corresponded. He gave me feedback on the song. Just, you know, especially when you're dealing with something that has specific stuff and it's not your culture. It's like the song before that on the album, Medicine Game. I was really helped in this song by an old Lakota friend of mine who really said, no, this, you know, you're not pronouncing this right. The nations need to be in this certain order because that's the way they're always talked about. It's the way the wampum belt is configured. And it's not Hiawatha, it's Ioente. You know, we did not invent the medicine game. It was given to us by Creator. So I wanted it to be something that it
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I do this a lot with songs, whether I'm writing about small commercial salmon fisheries in Alaska, which I have done, or work in a steel mill, or a song about a culture of which I am not a part. I'll take the song, send it to somebody who has some experience, and say, did I get this right?
That's good. That's good. Absolutely. Medicine Game has this Native American theme to it. Who's doing the chant towards the end? That's really unique.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine named Bill Miller. He's a First Nation singer, also from Wisconsin. He lives in Nashville now. He played the flute on it as well. And I really heard chanting from the beginning, but when I called him, I said, I just want some flute. And he called me back and said, there's room for chanting at the end. And I said, oh, thank you.
I know how unique. It really stands out. It really goes with it. Very, very well done. And then you go back in your life to a song called Peekaboo. Just a cutesy thing. That's you have a lot of fun on here, which is it breaks that up too.
I read this essay from this Middle Eastern poet who talked about how often games we play with very young children involve fear. And I thought, oh, wow, peekaboo is really that. I mean, the first thing you learn in a child psychology class, which I took a child psychology class when I was in college, is the principle of permanence. That as a baby, when your mother walks out of the room, she's gone. She's gone and she's never coming back. And the whole peekaboo thing was like, and that you laugh in joy and relief.
Yeah, yeah, that's really a very, very nice. You have a good story about a piano that has a certain life to itself.
The reason I'm in the South is I fell in love with Southern music when I was a kid, and convinced my advisor to let me do a 3-month independent study, hitchhiking around the Appalachians meeting banjo players. And here I am 50 years later, still on that 3-month independent study.
Yeah.
And one of my first stops was the Highlander Center in East Tennessee. And it's, I don't know if you know anything about Highlander, but it's.
I remember you told me about that. Yeah.
And Zilphia Horton came there in 1935. She went there to attend a workshop. She fell in love with the place. She fell in love with the founder. They married. And she is, in 1947, she was the cultural director there. And she did plays and she did a lot of music. She was a concert quality pianist. And she learned to play the accordion because it was more portable than the piano. But her piano has sat at Highlander for 90 years. And I have been doing it. Highlander was my first stop. I was invited to its 40th anniversary, I think, celebration in 1972. And I began a relationship with the place there, and I've done my songwriting camps there every year. And this piano has been something that we've used, and it was in really rough shape. I mean, it's been sitting in a major meeting room. There's no cover for it. You can see coat stains on the top of it, and people have written things, without putting a pad underneath it. And then the piano bears a very particular history. And so, the alums of all my songwriting camps, we decided as a gift to Highlander that we wanted to rebuild it. And so we did. And this is a song I wrote for the reinstallation of the piano back to Highlander. So it's a particular instrument. It's the first instrument that ever played We Shall Overcome.
Yeah, it's in the song there. It has this journey from Cincinnati to Mount Eagle, Tennessee. It just you just picture this, going through so much. And it's something that we know that because of the extent of the rebuild that we did, that it's good for another 100 years. Yeah, they really last, don't they? I mean, if you take care of it, it will take care of you. It's that kind of thing with a piano.
Yeah.
And probably all your instruments, I'm sure, as well. Your dulcimer, I'm sure you've had for ages as well.
Well, you want to take care of your tools. There was a neighbor of mine who when I had a farm down in Southwest Virginia for many years, I would go visit him, and he would have his shovels after he would use them. He would clean them, and then he would grease them. And, you'd go in there and you just think, this guy's great-grandchildren are going to be able to use that tool because he took care of it and he showed you how to take care of it. Now I'm looking at all my instruments and thinking, well, okay, there'll be a time when I'm not here and I want these instruments to be used. I don't want them to go to a museum, which I'm not important enough that they would do that. So I'm devising a plan right now to give my instruments, after my family has picked what they want, away to deserving young people, because I know from having gone through that journey that when you're young and starting out and you need a good instrument, you have to pay full fare.
Yeah.
When you're an old dog like me, instrument builders are coming up to me and say, will you play my instrument? I'll give it to you. And it's the world turned upside down. So hopefully some of these great instruments that I've accumulated over my life are going to continue to be used. And that's, no matter what you are, whether you're a writer, a vlogger, or a musician or a carpenter, you just want to be useful for as long as you can be. And have your tools be used.
Completely. That's really, really cool. One other song that really comes to mind is Ghost Town. Is there a particular town, or is this just something that just conjured up in
I was contemplating how after my father died back in 2014, that was my last link to my hometown.
Yeah, it always is, isn't it? Yeah.
And I mean, my stepmother lives there, but that's the last blood relative. I mean, my father was my last blood relative to this town, and I realized, wow, it's kind of a ghost town now. I mean, I'll come back. I've got old friends, and there's a really great bookstore there that a friend of mine owns. But no, it was a contemplation of the changes that happen after your last living relative dies in your hometown.
Yeah, it seems very introspective then, and you got to get that down on paper, and you're making songs and celebrating the fact that like I could look back, but I'm also looking forward as well.
Well, so many of the songs in this album are the product of having the time to cogitate about those things that actually happened years before. My father died in 2014. The whole subject of the song Moonshiner, for instance, was something I heard in the mid-1970s and it had sort of stayed there. But, when you have this expanse of time in front of you, you say, okay, today I just thought of that thing. I want to contemplate how I feel about my hometown now that my dad is not there anymore. So this has been a really rich time for me. Just, I can't help but lament all the terrible things that people have gone through. But for me, it's been a revelation, and it was exciting. It's exciting every time I sit down to write.
Yeah.
There's a kind of energy that's welling up in me that leads me to believe that, I'm going to write a song about that town I read about 10 years ago in the New York Times. I'm going to write a song about, my youngest son was a lacrosse star in high school, and I fell in love with the game. And so when this radio account of this new thing happening in the World Games came up, it was like my ears went, whoop, lacrosse.
Yeah. There's a song.
Yeah.
It's so cool. That's great. So the new one's out, and then you have another album planned for 2022. When do you expect to get that one out?
Well, it'll all be done, mixed and everything, by the end of the year. And the problem really is, does the world really need a 43rd John McCutcheon album?
Of course.
Well, and in such short order, my publicist is convinced that, for instance, you're one of the people who will get notice, say March. Oh, right. Leap, the new John McCutcheon album. And you'll look on your plate and you say, well, I did something back in September with John. I think I'll pass this time. But, you can't only, that's record company thinking. I've got these songs, and I've been listening to the rough mixes and everything, and in a lot of ways they're stronger songs than Bucket List. And I'm thinking, I'm dying to get these songs out there. And as you say, it's a wonderful problem to have.
Yeah.
So the album is called Leap, and I'm in the middle of it right now. We're doing it the same way. I'm doing my part, saying it to the engineer. The engineer does his little stuff and sends it to the bass player. The bass player sends it back. We send it to the piano player. The piano player does this. Then the engineer does his stuff and then sends it to the fiddle player. And then, it's a really expensive way to make an album.
You're not all in the same room having that feeling and being able to play off of each other.
Oh, it's 3 times as much work for the engineer.
Yeah.
That's, he has to go back over else. God bless him.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It was lovely speaking with you today.
Always great to talk to you, Bob.
Absolutely. Have a very, very good day and the rest of the year. And we'll hear from you soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.